Hi everyone, welcome back. Today, we're tackling a very common and often frustrating error in LWC, cannot read properties of undefined, reading data, that pops up during your component's connect phase. This error can stop your development in its tracks, but understanding it makes it easy to fix. We'll break down what this message means, why it happens, and most importantly, how to solve it effectively. This specific error message tells you that your JavaScript code tried to access a property named data on a variable or object that currently holds no value, meaning it is undefined. The connect phase refers to the period when your LWC component is first being initialized and added to the DOM, or document object model. This is often when your component is trying to fetch and display initial information. The primary reason you encounter cannot read properties of undefined, reading data, is almost always related to asynchronous operations. Think about fetching data from Salesforce using an Apex method or a wire service. These operations don't return data instantly. They take a moment. Your LWC component, however, might try to render or process this data immediately. If the data hasn't arrived yet, the variable meant to hold it will be undefined. When your code then tries to access .data from this undefined variable, the error occurs. A very common scenario involves a wire service. When a wire service is first invoked, its data property is initially undefined. It only gets populated once the data successfully returns from the server. If you try to access this.wiredResult.data some field before wiredResult.data has been populated, you'll hit this error. Another culprit can be conditional rendering in your HTML. You might have an if-true template that becomes true, but the data it expects inside is still loading. So, how do we fix this persistent LWC headache? The most crucial step is to always safeguard your data access. Always assume your asynchronous data might not be available immediately. First, in your HTML template, use if-true directives extensively. For example, instead of directly displaying p.wiredResult.data.name/p, you should wrap it like this. Template if true equals wiredResult.data, p.wiredResult.data.name/p/template. This ensures the content inside the template only renders when wiredResult.data actually has a value, preventing attempts to read properties from an undefined object. Second, in your JavaScript, always check for the presence of data before trying to use it. When using a wire service, your wired property will expose both data and error properties. A robust pattern is to use a setter or a function for the wire. At wire, get records, wired records, error, data, if, data, this.records equals data, else if, error, console.error, error loading records, error. This explicitly handles both success and error states, and ensures this.records is only set when data is available. For direct property access, use optional chaining or explicit if checks. For instance, instead of this.myObject.data.someProperty, use this.myObject data some property. The operator will stop evaluating and return undefined if any part of the chain is null or undefined, preventing the error. Third, consider initializing properties in your component's class. If myObject is expected to eventually hold data, sometimes initializing it to myObject equals or myObject equals null can prevent undefined issues, depending on your logic. Fourth, understand the LWC lifecycle hooks. Your connected callback runs very early in the component's lifecycle. Data from a wire service often arrives after connected callback has finished. So, avoid relying on wired data being present directly within connected callback unless you've specifically handled its asynchronous nature. Finally, for debugging, use console.log liberally. Print the values of your variables just before the line where you suspect the error is happening. This helps you see if the data is undefined at that exact moment. Use your browser's developer tools. The Salesforce LWC Inspector extension is also an incredibly helpful tool for understanding component state and wired data. By consistently implementing these checks and understanding the asynchronous nature of data fetching, you can effectively eliminate this common undefined error and build more robust LWC components. Thank you so much for watching this video. I truly hope these tips help you debug and prevent this very common LWC error in your projects. If you found this information helpful, please give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more Salesforce development tips and tricks. We'll see you in the next one.